Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. We'll wait a few more moments to let everyone in.
Yeah, I think you're ready to start, Phil. Over to you and Sam. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you, Candice. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. This is a further update on the AFA and FPA proposed merger. Thank you for joining us in now the second half of January. I trust that everyone had a good break over the Christmas New Year period. We have a big year in front of us, and certainly a big few months in front of us as we progress with the merger. Today, it's going to be Sam as our National President and myself presenting. Just a few housekeeping things. All the participants in the webinar will be on mute throughout the session. However, you will have the opportunity to ask questions, and certainly at the end of the presentation, we'll spend some time going through those questions. We've got Kaz Garrard here to facilitate those questions and make sure that we get to the key questions that people have on this most important issue. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to our National President, Sam Pereira, to kick us off. Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Phil. And to echo Phil's comments, welcome to everybody. Appreciate you giving up your time to be with us today on this very important subject. We want to take you through the progress so far. There will be some deep diving into some of the detail, just for the benefit of for your benefit. We are happy to take questions as well, and Phil's outlined how we will do that. So just to start with some key recent developments, mid-December, just before Christmas, we released a merger summary document, which is basically a term sheet in terms of what we intend to do in the major areas relating to the merger. Additionally, we released a draft constitution as well, so you could get a grasp of what it is that effectively we're signing up for if we vote in favour of the merger and go into this new entity. Something that's new that you may not know about is on the advice of our lawyers that ourselves and the FPA have had to informally write to the ACCC to get their clearance. And this is because it is anticipated that if the merger were to proceed, that the AFA and the FPA coming together would represent close to 70 to 80% of financial advisors on the register, which may create some competition issues. Phil outlined some progress on the new name. We're in the process of finalising a merger agreement, which is a legal document that I will execute on behalf of the AFA, and we're going to talk through the timeline as well. Thanks, Phil. If we move on to the agenda. So taking through the governance and leadership arrangements, I want to touch really quickly on the why, as to why we're going down this track of pursuing a merger, update on the timeline, talk a little bit about the categories and the resolutions that'll be put up for a vote on the 28th of February. Principally, though, there are three reasons as to why we are running this webinar. I want you, our members, to be informed about exactly what it is that we are proposing to do. I'd like your eyes and your nows to scrutinise what it is that we're doing, and sincerely, myself, Phil, and the rest of your board welcome your constructive criticism and ideas in relation to the path that we propose to go down. And finally, we would love you to advocate in favour of a yes vote. We intend to go to vote on the 28th of February. Myself, the board, Phil and the leadership team would like a mandate. We want as many AFA members as possible to vote in favour of this merger, so we can be extremely confident in the direction that we're heading in. So, look, the reasons for the merger, thanks, Phil, they're set out on this particular slide. There is no doubt that with 70 to 80% of advisors being represented on the far by the merged entity, that we will have a stronger and more united voice for the profession, which is something that the profession has been asking for a number of years. And that's vitally important, of course, because the work of us at the AFA, the work of our friends over at the FPA, largely we expend our resources is in the pursuit of policy settings, advocating for policy settings that enable financial advisors and our practices to thrive. As a consequence, it is hoped that we will be able to serve more Australians with quality financial advice. And also, as a consequence of our work, we want to be able to increase the affordability of advice so more Australians can seek financial advice. So, of course, coming together, eradicating the duplicate resources that we're currently expending in pursuit of the largely the same aim, we believe that we would be able to get better outcomes for our members and for the profession by combining and having a strong unified voice. Of course, the other major reason for the merger, the AFA's unique value proposition, as I see it, as your board agrees to, is really our culture and community. We are a 76-year-old business, a business that's built on a spirit of volunteerism and people contributing to make the profession a better profession. So in terms of safeguarding that culture and community, unfortunately, the current business model, our assessment is, the board's assessment is that it is not sustainable over the medium to long term. So we've had to look for a way to ensure that we can continue the good work that we've undertaken over the last 76 years well into the next 76 years, because the economics currently do not work. And finally, as a result of coming together, we are hoping that as a result of being a well-capitalised, efficient, a more sophisticated and organised organisation, that will be able to deliver more for our members. Why now? The sector's been calling for it. The regulators, the legislators are calling for it, and we've worked more closely than we've ever had with the FPA, principally in the area of regulation and our advocacy efforts. And there is more that unites us today than has been ever before in the past. So they're the whys, if you like, for the merger. This has been a body of work that we've been working towards, exploring alternative strategies on for the best part of 2.5 years. So it's quite a well-considered proposal that your board's putting to you. Phil, over to you to perhaps just touch quickly on the governance and leadership arrangements of the merged entity.
Thanks, Sam. And just a further point on this reasons and the question of advocacy. We're now in a situation where the Quality of Advice Review final report has been submitted to the government, but we have no commitment or guarantees of reforms being implemented. There is a substantial advocacy workload over the course of the next year or two to make sure that we do see substantial changes. And that equally applies with the issues that we want to see happen to the education standard and the review of the FASEA Code of Ethics. Moving on to governance and leadership arrangements, the AFA board was always very clear that we needed to have a strong AFA influence in the new merged association, and that will be achieved through a few key mechanisms, and Sam will talk about community and culture in a moment, but one of them is through the governance model. There will be 4 former AFA directors who will be appointed to the board of the merged entity for a 3-year period, and this will be effective from the proposed legal completion date. And we'll go through the merger timeline in a moment. They will be joining the existing 8 FPA directors on the merged entity board. And look, people ask us the question about a ratio of 1 to 2. Well, I think membership numbers suggest that we are less than half the size of the FPA. So we've actually done fairly well in getting those 4 directors there. The chair of the merged entity board will be appointed by the FPA, and the deputy chair will be appointed by the former AFA directors. This transitional board will be in place for a 3-year period, and after that, the board will go back to being a board of 9 directors. And certainly AFA members will have the opportunity where they have voting rights, so all practitioners will have the opportunity to stand for election over the coming election cycles. The existing AFA board will continue in place until the AFA is wound up, and we expect that that would happen sometime from July onwards. The CEO of the merged entity will be the current FPA CEO, Sarah Abood, and importantly, those employees who are being transferred to the merged entity will go over on the legal completion date, but they will continue to serve as AFA members until the full transition of membership happens on the 1st of July, and we'll talk more about that in a moment.
Thanks, Phil. So culture and community, look, as I said, it's our assessment that, culture and community is the AFA's unique value proposition, which has been built over the last 76 years. I also put to you that this is probably our most valuable asset in terms of our contribution to the merged entity. Yes, we're taking some money with us, and yes, we're taking our members. We're hoping to take as many of our members along with us, but certainly our community and culture, which is the DNA of the AFA, is the fabric. So to that end, we've got a community and culture committee that's made up of AFA and FPA directors and members, equal representation. My good friend and former president of the AFA, Michael Novak, is the co-chair, along with Kirsten James, who's the director, co-chair from the FPA side. We've got a couple of our directors, Patricia and Stephen Knight, and they are both there, not just because they're directors, but Queensland and WA have some do communities extremely well and do culture really well. So they're at the forefront of ensuring or contributing to the discussion and the discourse around community and culture, along with David Slovanich, who's done some great work and a former director around the AFA Foundation. We've got Matt Wallace from representing the AFA management team. The job of this particular committee is to look at our awards, our events, our initiatives, and finally our communities and the FPA chapters, and work out how they're going to be integrated moving forward into the merged entity. Importantly, until such time as that particular committee made the recommendations and put them to the board, the existing initiatives, events, awards, etc., we're going to use our best endeavours to ensure that they're continued until such time as we've reached decision as to exactly the form of some of these events, the awards, the communities, chapters, etc. The importance of this, of course, is come legal completion date, which is slated for the first week of April. We do not want our communities, our initiatives, our awards, our events to come to a grinding halt on that particular day. We want to have some momentum as we bring the best of both our two worlds together. So we have prioritised and understand the importance of retaining that community and culture, and we've got a great team that's spearheading that work on behalf of the AFA. Phil, new name?
Yes, thank you, Sam. So right from the beginning in the discussions that took place about the prospect of a merger, it was very clear that this was a merger, not a takeover, and therefore it was considered very appropriate that the new merged association had its own unique identity, and that meant taking a new name, a new logo, a new branding. And that's exactly what is going to happen. There is a branding agency that was appointed to undertake the work. They have surveyed members, they've consulted with certain key stakeholders in the process of identifying a set of options for the name of the merged entity. And we thank those people who provided feedback to that process. Now, I can update you to say that there is a preferred name. We're not in a position to announce it publicly. We hope to do that shortly. In taking on a new name, there is a lot of things that you have to get organised before you say anything publicly, because you need to have considered the company name, the business name, trading name, websites, social media accounts, and so on. So that work is well progressed. Once we have finalised the selection of the name, the agency will then move on to focusing on the logo and branding for the new merged entity. Right, the merger timeline. This represents what's going to happen over the course of the first half of this year. Of course, should members approve the vote, and that's the plan that we have set out here. So there's consultation taking place on a regular basis, but importantly, this webinar today and the FPA are also having a webinar tomorrow. That's all with the view of working very hard to finalise the documentation that will be required to go out to members for the purpose of the vote. And the deadline to send that out is the 6th of February in just a couple of weeks' time. Then we're proposing to have the extraordinary general meeting, which will be held as a hybrid meeting in Sydney on the 28th of February. Members will be able to attend in person, but those who can't will be able to listen in and contribute to the discussion remotely. Importantly, though, voting is likely to need to be done either in person at the meeting or via proxy beforehand. The legal completion date is at this stage proposed to be the 3rd of April. That depends upon a number of core processes being completed by that time. Legal completion will involve the establishment of the new name, the commencement of the new constitution, the appointment of the AFA directors to the board, and also the movement of the AFA staff over to the merged entity. Members will have the opportunity to accept an invitation for membership of the merged entity. We can't just move the members over lock, stock and barrel. We've got to give them the opportunity to choose to become a member of the merged entity. And there'll be a period of roughly 2 months for members to do that. Then we have the formal transition of AFA members to the merged entity, which will start on the 1st of July this year. And that aligns with the renewal cycle that will apply for the new merged entity. Past that, we then have the need for a second extraordinary general meeting for the AFA for the remaining members to authorise the AFA to be wound up, and as a result, the appointment of a liquidator. And we expect that to happen sometime towards the end of July. Okay, I want to talk about member categories and transition arrangements. This is really important in terms of what is the impact on your membership. Now, there was a merger summary document that was released on the 13th of December, which had a schedule in it that set out the different proposed member categories of the new association. And AFA members will largely fit into the practitioner, affiliate, retired, and student categories. Now, importantly, in terms of fees, practitioners, affiliates, associates, and retired members will all receive a fee reduction. And that fee reduction for practitioners will depend upon whether you're currently part of a bulk renewal program or you renew independently, individually, and also whether you're an advisor in the first 3 years of practice. So the amount of the discount will range between $5 and $245. I talked before about how members will be given an invitation to join the merged entity, most probably from the middle of April, and they'll have 2 months to complete that. Now, we also have the ongoing processes that apply to a membership association, such as renewal, which we do on a monthly basis. And we will continue to issue renewal notices to members up until the time of the vote, and they will be renewals for a 12-month period. After the vote, should the members approve the merger, we will then, from that first batch of renewals that go out in March for commencement on the 1st of April, we will only be invoicing for a pro rata amount through to the 30th of June. So if you have an April commencement date for your membership year, you will get an invoice during March that will be for a 3-month period. And progressively, as we get closer, it'll be 2 months and then 1 month. That brings us to the 30th of June, which is the formal proposed transition date. Now, members who have paid for a period that extends beyond the 30th of June, and there'll be people who have renewed prior to the vote actually taking place, or as a result of an invoice received prior to the vote, they will get a credit under the new association. So if you've paid for 12 months from the 1st of January, you will get a credit of 6 months that will go towards your membership fee of the new merged association. Now, as I said before, members have a choice as to whether they want to move across. Some may choose not to. We hope very few. But where you do choose not to move, you will also receive a refund for any fees that have been paid for the period beyond the 30th of June this year. Now, we're very happy to answer any questions that you might have in terms of what this means for you and any finer detail around these transition arrangements.
Thanks, Phil. On the note of questions, I've seen a couple of questions come through about the designations. There is a slide on designations, so that will either answer your questions. If not, once myself and Phil finish speaking, hopefully in the next 6 or 7 minutes, we've got a good half an hour to traverse some of your questions. And most of the questions we've received today are in and around education standards, culture and community. So really quickly, these are the resolutions. You've got a copy of these in the documents that were sent out to you in mid-December. You will get a copy of these when we send out the notice of meeting on the 6th of February. A and E are largely procedural. It allows us to complete the merger. Part D is the constitution of the AFA that needs to be amended. Only once the members have approved the merger. It's tweaking our constitution to allow the board that remains to wind up the AFA and close down the shutters, if you like. So we need the ability to terminate members and change the quorum for a general meeting to be able to do so in an orderly manner. B and C relate to the AFA investment fund. For those of you that don't know, the AFA has got a rainy day fund with some $2.7 million approximately, which is managed by a separate entity with its separate governance structure and its separate board. Our treasurer sits on that particular board, but it's a rainy day fund. But it is anticipated, and it is the AFA's wish that if the members vote in favour of the merger and are going into the merged entity, that the members' money that sits in the rainy day fund follows the members into the merged entity. So resolution B and C, otherwise 2 and 3, enables us to, is aimed at the members giving the thumbs up, their approval to the merged entity becoming the new beneficiary of the AFA investment fund, which is a trust. And then ultimately, when the AFA investment fund is terminated, the surplus funds to be moved into the merged entity. Phil, the next slide, please. So this is covering off what I've already said about the AFA investment fund, which is our surplus investable assets. So far as the FPA is concerned, they don't have a separate entity. Their surplus assets, which number $12 million, Phil, in cash or cash-like assets. Is that correct?
Samuel, they have investments of around 14 million and net assets of about 12 million.
I've asked that question of you 4 times over the last 24 hours, so apologies. I should retain my numbers better. But the FPA's reserves are held within the FPA, and they'll follow through the merged entity as well. And that's it really. If there are any questions in relation to the AFA investment fund, I'm happy to take them on, but essentially it'll be, it's our wish that it's shut down at the corpus or the surplus funds are transferred into the merged entity. The AFA Foundation, of course, is our charitable arm. It's expected. The AFA and the AFA board is currently the trustee of the AFA Foundation. So it follows if the AFA does no longer exist, that the AFA Foundation needs to be wound up as well. So the intention is to wind up the foundation, pay out the surplus assets, and then the charitable organisation for the merged entity will be the Future 2 Foundation. So we've got our Vice President, Michelle Beach, and Dave Slovenich, who's been involved with the AFA Foundation for a number of years, leading that work and working out how exactly the AFA can fold into and work within the Future 2 Foundation under the merged entity. So that's another important piece of this puzzle that we've got to tidy up, and the succession plan, if you like, the AFA Investment Fund, and the AFA Foundation. So Phil, a slide on the draft constitution and professional designations, and then we'll move into questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, so on the 13th of December, we released a draft constitution that would apply to the merged entity. And we're now in that process of consultation and seeking feedback. Importantly, whilst the AFA members will not have the chance to directly vote on the new constitution, because the new constitution is the constitution that will apply to the FPA once it becomes the merged entity. So it'll be the FPA members that get to vote to accept the new constitution. AFA members do have the opportunity to consult and provide feedback on it. And of course, they have the opportunity to vote on the merger as a whole. Now, the process that we went through to resolve the content of the constitution was done with the basis of external advice, and there was a review process to look at the way other professional associations had designed their constitutions, and also to look at a template for an association that's a company not-for-profit limited by guarantee. Now, the constitution that has been put forward, we can frankly say is reasonably standard. You know, it addresses the things that you would expect to see in a professional association constitution, such as the objects or the purpose of the association, membership, who can be a member, what happens changing category, things like that. Disciplinary regime, which is an important part of being a professional association. Directors, appointment of directors, terms, directors' meetings and the operation of directors' meetings, general meetings, how voting is conducted, and also importantly, setting regulations which are akin to what we have at the moment as bylaws, but they're a secondary set of rules that can be set by the board, but can also be vetoed by members through a disallowance mechanism. So they're important because we don't want everything in the Constitution, given that the Constitution can only be changed at general meetings, and we typically only have those every year. There are some additional things in the Constitution, including the transitional arrangements for the 4 AFA directors to be nominated and join the board for that 3-year period. And there's also, importantly, discussion around the Community and Culture Committee. And this is important because the AFA wanted to make sure that there was a binding commitment to ensure that community and culture was addressed in an appropriate manner. And that's has been achieved by it being in the Constitution. And Sam talked earlier on about that committee and the work that they have already started to do. Now, intentionally, the Constitution has been designed at a relatively high level rather than being an excessively prescriptive document. And I think anyone involved in constitutions would understand why we want to make sure that it's not an unnecessarily complex and bureaucratic document. We very much welcome feedback on this, whether it's through a question now or providing a comment through the Q&A, or alternatively via email to our merger@afa.asn.au website. So yes, we certainly recognise the critical importance of the Constitution document as the the thing that sets the governance framework for the association. And it's important that members are comfortable with it, they understand it, and we therefore very much welcome feedback. The last of our formal slides before we go to Q&A is with respect to professional designations. And we very much appreciate that there are a number of our members who have earned those designations over the last 10 years or more. And the commitment is very clear, and the commitment was from very early on that they would not only be continued to be recognised, but also supported. We'll also continue to be registered with APFINSA so that it's a global recognition of those designations. However, neither of those two AFA designations will be open to new applicants. The primary designation going forward will be the CFP, and that's a very logical outcome given the fact that there are substantially more CFPs in the FPA than there are FCHFPs in the AFA. We're also working hard with respect to how existing AFA members, whether they're FCHFPs or not, can achieve the CFP pathway. And that needs to be viewed in the context of the FASEA education standards, because people have been doing a lot of study over the last few years, and therefore they're more likely to have access to courses that would give them exemptions from completion of the full CFP program. But each individual situation will need to be assessed carefully, but we very much welcome any questions that we get with respect to both professional designations and how to transition, should members approve the merger, to obtain that CFP professional designation. So that is the end of the formal part of the presentation. We're now going to ask Kaz Garrard to go through the questions that we have received, and we welcome more questions as we still have 25 minutes of time for Q&A. So please throw in any question that you would like to have covered. The whole intent of this session is to make sure that people do understand the mechanics of what has been proposed, have the chance to ask questions, have the chance to express any reservations that they have. Ultimately, we want to make sure that our members go into the vote, which we said would happen on the 28th of February, well prepared, well on top of what's involved, and ready to vote. So over to you, Kaz.
Well, we have 3 questions at the moment, and they're all related to their fellow chartered financial practitioner designation. And the questions are really people wanting a level of comfort that the designations will continue under the merged entity. And I think that's really been answered in the last slide. And how committed the merged entity will be to continuing recognising the FCHFP.
As I might dive in there and set the context, and then Phil can add to it. There is no imperative for anyone to do the CFP program. For people that want to do the CFP program, whether you're an FCHFP or a C.
Kaz, are you still there? We seem to have lost Sam.
Sam seems to have frozen.
Yeah.
We might.
Well, the CFP. The question from Mario as to whether the FCHFP will be supported, throughout the entirety of the future of the proposed merged entity. Mario, unfortunately, I can't give you that answer because we've got a transitional board. Who knows what the board will look like? Who knows what the profession will look like in 10, 20 years in terms of education requirements, etc. But certainly, it is our intention to do our utmost best to ensure that the people that have done the designation are afforded the opportunity to continue to receive that designation. FINZA might turn around and morph into something else in years to come. So I could not guarantee that any designation, including CFP, will continue on in perpetuity. How committed is the merged entity? The merged entity is absolutely committed to continue to recognise and maintain the FCHFP. Kaz, do you want to speak to the rest of the questions, or ask Phil the rest of the questions?
Absolutely. So a really good question here, again, related to the FCHFP, just the fact that in the discussion paper, this wasn't mentioned in a category of membership.
Phil?
Yeah, thank you. That's true. And I think some of the guiding reasons for that is the member categories to keep it to a pragmatic, rational regime and not have a whole bunch of separate individual categories. And so we haven't set out to create a separate category for the FCHFPs. That we're talking a few hundred FCHFPs in the context of what will be over 10,000 members in the merged entity. So it doesn't have the mass to necessitate a separate member category. But I think the other point to make is that there will be a practitioner category that FCHFPs will be part of. They will pay the fee that applies to that, and which is $5.95. They will not be paying any extra for the fact that they are an FCHFP, but they will still continue to get the recognition that comes with being an FCHFP.
Thanks, Phil.
We do have another question here, not really related to the merger, but maybe one for Phil. Is there any news from the Minister regarding the 10-year rule on education?
Yeah, so a good advocacy question. We had the opportunity to meet with the Minister right at the end of November, and he remains determined to push this through. He made further comments to suggest that he will consult on it in the early part of this year with the view to have legislation in the Parliament by the middle of the year. It's something that we have been regularly checking in to see the progress. We did want to see this resolved as quickly as possible because we want members to have the certainty as far as what education they're required to undertake so that they can get on and get it done and have the confidence about the future. So, look, I think he's absolutely determined. We have suggested that it's important to find a balance in this. We've supported a 10-year education experienced advisor pathway, but suggested that they should also be the need to do the ethics unit and that there should be a sunset clause on it.
Phil, I might just overlay, and this talks to the, it's one thing for our legislators to come out and announce, their intention in terms of policy, as did the then Shadow Master Stephen Jones do before the election. Now it still needs a lot of work. So that was his intention, and then he became the minister, and we had an opportunity to meet with him soon after he did, and you said it's a priority. Some months later, it's still his intention. But why am I highlighting this point? The reason I'm highlighting this point, it is still more important than ever that we have a strong and united voice, because we still need to continue to push. It has not been an easy road in terms of advocacy. We have not had many wins over the last 5 to 7 years. I do not need to, tell this audience, the struggle that we've had. but one of the benefits of this merger and the track that we intend to run on is unifying our voice, doubling down on our resources so we can continue to push, because there's still a lot of hard work to do, not just in relation to professional standards, but certainly in relation to quality of advice review. They will tell us what we want to hear, but there's still a lot of pushing and a lot of cajoling to do to try and get the outcomes that the profession so desperately needs. So thanks. Over to you, Kaz. Other questions?
Good question here about whether the bulk renewal process will be provided to licensees under the new entity.
So the answer to that question, Maria, and thanks for the question, is the merged entity will not be running a bulk renewal program, certainly not this year. That is something that we have managed for our members, which we believe was beneficial for them. However, that's not the proposal with the merged entity.
Okay, we have a question with respect to the foundation. Sam, you mentioned something about the winding up of the foundation, and the question is, does this mean that all remaining foundation funds will be paid to charities?
Yes, the intention, thanks Mike, the intention is to have all surplus assets paid out by the 30th of June 2023, which is what Dave Slovanich and Michelle and the rest, and Phil is obviously part of that work, are working on. Thanks.
So importantly, to add to that, the AFA Foundation's trust deed allows it to pay donations to designated gift recipients, which is the tax term for an entity that you can get a tax refund for contributing to. But what it means is that the AFA Foundation can either pay its money to a group of individual charities that are selected as part of the normal process that we run through, or alternatively, the money can be transferred to the Future 2 Foundation, which is also a designated gift recipient. Now, there's a question there about, will the new body support the 10-year education experience pathway? And I'm very firmly of the view, yes. We have, and we continue to work as part of a joint associations working group on all the regulatory reform agenda that is going on at the moment. And when we prepared our submission in September in response to the Minister's proposal around the 10-year experience advisor pathway, so did the joint submission of the Joint Associations Working Group. So the FPA is a member of that, as we are, as are the accounting bodies, the SMSF Association, the Stockbrokers and Investment Advisors Association. So there's very strong support for that. As I said, it's about a solution that gives that experience pathway to advisors who might have a time frame of wanting to continue to operate for up to 10 years. So it would be a good balance between those people who are hesitant about making concessions to undermine professional standards and those who want to see greater flexibility in the regime. It's one of the ways of achieving it, and it's one that we'll continue to advocate for, and we have full confidence that the merged entity would do the same. Right, do we have any other questions?
Phil, we must have done a thorough job.
No more.
Sorry, Kaz?
Yeah, no more questions at the moment.
Thank you very much. Phil, unless you have any closing remarks, I might just close off the webinar and give people 15 minutes back in their diary. Anything from you, Phil?
No, I think pass back to you, but thanking everyone for attending, and This consultation process is ongoing. Please send any emails you've got to merger@afa.asn.au, and we'll be very happy to respond.
Thanks, Phil. So with that in mind, I said at the start, 3 reasons from my perspective. I wanted to ensure that you're well informed in terms of what we are currently working on. I invite your constructive feedback if you've got ideas on how we can improve what we're doing, or in fact, ideas on additional matters that we ought to consider. We'll welcome them. And lastly, and most importantly, we want your advocacy. You are unique. You've spent 45 minutes of your day attending this webinar to hear about what we are doing. So that's a commitment, that's an investment. So we'd love you to turn into advocates. As I said, your board and Phil and the management team would like a mandate to ensure that we've got as many of our AFA members as possible giving us the green light. This is single-handedly the most important decision of our 76-year-old history. We do not take it lightly, so we want to ensure that we've got all your support and your blessing in terms of the significant decision that we're about to make through the vote on the 28th of February. As I've said before, there is a lot more work to do in terms of the profession to try and get the outcomes that we also desperately need. And as I've also said in other forums, there's no reason as to why the merged entity could not be as potent as the Pharmacy Guild of Australia, efficient, respected, well capitalised, sophisticated in our advice strategy, and most importantly, effective. And it is my firm belief, it is our board's firm belief, and the management team's firm belief that merging with the FPA will give us the best chance to do that. So with all of that in mind, thank you again for your attendance. I hope you have a great day, and look forward to providing you with more updates as we go through this process. Thank you.